In this video, what we're going to do now is talk about how to update the JavaScript to do the following. So set the color of the square to be blue when the button is clicked and display the color of the square below the button. So I'm going to start by this part. So we need to have some space somewhere to display the color of the square below the button. So I'm going to go back to my markup, and here I'm just going to put a paragraph tag, and I'm going to leave that empty, but I'm going to give that a color name. So we're going to give this an ID of color name so that we can refer to that in our JavaScript. So let's have a look now again. So we want to change the color of the square when the button's clicked. Well, the first thing we need to do is make sure that we know that it's working. And if you go back to the pseudocode guide or the HTML JavaScript guide in the specification, you'll see that we have the alert function. So let's just first of all go to main.js, and the first thing we need to know is how to change the style of an element. Well, we can use element.style property, and you'll notice that I've got this here as well because that's where we put the element. So the first thing we need to do is find the square elements, or the button element in this case, and so we can say that the button is equal to, and this needs to be either a constant or let or var. Well, we're not going to change the button, so I'm going to call it const. And if you look at the guide, it should be document.get element by ID. And what's the name of the ID? We called it random button. So once we have that button element, we can replace this in here with that. And then what we can do, just to make sure that we know that this is working, we can just put an alert that says hello world. I like to do this all the time just to make sure that I haven't made a mistake and it's not working because of this mistake rather than the code that's in here. So I'll save that and I'll click on random color, and we can see that nothing seems to be happening. So let's just double check. What did we call it? And we called it button submit. That will be the reason why. So I'll just change the name of that to button submit. And that's the reason why I think it's important that you put this in here to start with, just so you can make sure you don't make a silly mistake like that. And it is still not working. So what seems to be the issue? Well, of course, the issue is that what we haven't done is we haven't linked to this main.js. So what we need to do is just before the last line for the body is we're going to do a script, and we need to set its source to be equal to, and I've called mine main.js. And so now, with a bit of luck, we can see that we have an alert box saying hello world. So we made two mistakes there. One, we used the wrong name or ID, and then we forgot to link to the file. So now that we know this is working, we need to change the color of the square. Well, in order to change the color of the square, we need that element too. So I'm just going to copy this, and I'm going to rename this variable square, and we want to change that to be square. So now we have an element called square. So if we look here, element.style.background color equals red. Well, this time the element is the square that we want to change the style of, and because this is in JavaScript, we do need to put this in quotes, and of course we said to change that to be blue. So let's see what happens now when we click on here, and we can see now that every time we click on it, of course it's never going to change again. So if I load the page, I click on here, and it's now changing to blue. So in this second video, what we've done is we have set the color of the square to blue. What we haven't done is display the color of the square below the button, and that's why we added in here this paragraph with an ID of color name. So we can get, again, the element called that. So I refresh, color name. So here I'm going to change that to color name, and I'm going to call that color name. And what do we want to do? Well, we want to do color name dot and inner HTML from the specification is equal to blue. Now, of course, this might change. In fact, it will change. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to say that const, at the moment it's not a random color, but I'll call it random color, is equal to blue, and I'll simply change these to be random color so that I only need to change it in one place. So now you'll see that it states blue when I click on it here. Now, of course, it doesn't say anything at all when I first start. So what I could do is I can just set the squares, no, not the square, the color name dot inner HTML to equal, at the moment it is simply red. We've initialized that to be red in our style.css. And so now when we run this, we can see that it changes. And so now we've completed step 1, step 2, and now we need to move on to updating the JavaScript to select a random null or a random color even, instead of a fixed blue color when it is clicked.